This channel is supported by TrueFire. TrueFire is an online library of lessons from some of my favourite players. There's thousands of lessons on there. You can use the promo code JNC40 to get 40% off of any of their courses.
People often ask me what I do for a living. I'm Stipe Miocic's head coach. I'm someone who uses basically the volume and tones on my sort of Strat style guitars pretty much full open most of the time. I think there are arguments for why this might not be the best thing to do, but I was reading on David Barber's website and he kind of talked about using the tone control on your bridge pickup to kind of dial back the high end whilst keeping the harmonic content and the sustain elements from having your tone on your drive pedal or maybe even your presence on your amp up higher. I wanted to explore in this video why that might be something worth checking out, and it's apparently something that David said that all experienced players know this trick.
Now, what David Barber suggesting that all experienced players, when they're on this bridge pickup, and Eric Johnson for sure, I heard talk about this, and my buddy Tony Startup kind of nudged me in this direction a while ago, is just roll this. On my K line, this pickup has its own tone control, so I can roll that all the way back off if I wanted. What David Barber is suggesting is kind of dialing in the amp and your pedals to have the amount of harmonics and sustain that you want, but then using this tone knob to actually kind of just makes all of these other positions a lot more enjoyable.
I kind of experimented with this, and my question I really had was, do I even really know what a presence knob does? So did some Googling on this, and it's started to make a little bit more sense to me. So your presence knob generally on most amps controls the treble content, or high-end content in the power amp section of the amplifier, right? And as you increase presence, apparently you decrease negative feedback. That's another thing that happens, as well as sort of opening up the sort of treble response of the amplifier. So the things that make an amp sound like an amp sort of are more present as you increase the presence control. If you're looking for power amp saturation and the non-linearities in an amp, which are the things that I think non-linearities are more or less the things that make an amp sound more like an amp and less like a pedal, for example. As you increase presence, that's kind of what happened. So this is mostly going to be affecting the top end of the amp, right? Mostly. For me, I generally dial that presence back because it is something that I'm quite sensitive to at the moment. I think as we age, our top end rolls off. A nice built-in high cut for life. So for me, kind of my predicament is that I quite like darker tones. So typically for me, I will dial in a lead tone with my bridge pickup, because that's normally where I am for my be easy to compensate for in the digital world, because you can just use a high cut in the cab and it doesn't really change the response so much. But in the real world, particularly when you add more gain, I end up doing this sort of thing where I'm dialing back presence. And then you get this thing where you switch to your neck pickup. And things like rolling off just doesn't really, the amp kind of gets a bit blanketed. Whereas if you're able to keep the treble maybe even start to push these things, you get a bit more of a responsive experience. But then that bridge there can get quite kind of thin, ice picky. These are Lola Dirty Blonde, so they actually have a slightly hotter bridge pickup, which mitigates some of this, but the solution really seems to lie, and this is kind of David Barber's suggestion, that every pro and every experienced player secret here is having this bridge pickup married to a tone, and then when you're dialing in your desired amount of drive, also I think is going to apply with even more gain. But the idea is that you're leaving the amp open, and like David Barber says, to have the amount of sustain and harmonics that you're desiring, but actually using this tone knob here as you're kind of, you know, holding at the gate. And that's maybe a little bit too much. So instead of just closing off the amp like I maybe would do normally, and having the tone all the way up, instead, I open this up. Do I prefer the way this feels? Is this something you do or something you've experimented with? Yeah, something I've not really tried too much. I'm more of a guy who kind of turns the presence and the treble down. I think in some ways to my own detriment in terms of feel of the amp, and also then losing potentially some of the more open sounding neck and, you know, fourth position tones. I don't know, let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you do it? Love to open up some discussion on this. One negative that I've found with this is that it can, depending on the rig, give you a little bit of a honky tone. That's something that has happened for me quite often, is that in the room I dial the presence back and I'm thinking, yeah, that works better for me in the room, but then when I listen back to the recording or with the mic up, it's actually a little bit darker than I was maybe going for.